Good evening, and welcome back to the Human News Network, your legally mandated source for government-approved information and propaganda. I'm your host, Alan Ingram, here to bring you the stories that matter, whether you remember them or not. Tonight, we bring exciting news for book enthusiasts of all kinds. A library has appeared in an open field in the middle of nowhere, dubbed Pleasant Grove Community Library. This mysterious establishment manifested overnight, and thus far, no entity has claimed responsibility or ownership over the building. To help us navigate this labyrinth of literature, we have with us an urban explorer and best-selling author, Cliff Hanger, who, along with his team, dared to venture into the library's depths. Cliff, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alan. It's been quite a unique experience.
I'm sure our audience is eager to hear about it. Cliff, how did you first learn about Pleasant Grove Community Library?
It started with online rumors in the exploration community about a building that had simply appeared overnight. Satellite images confirmed that one day there was nothing, and the next there was this massive structure. Buildings don't just manifest out of thin air, at least not usually.
Indeed. So you assembled your team and set out to investigate. What did you find upon arrival?
Approaching the library was surreal. The building was an architectural marvel. Towering spires, intricate stone carvings, and stained glass windows that seemed to shift images when you weren't looking directly at them. The air around it was different, thicker, almost humming with energy. We entered cautiously, and the interior was even more astounding. The ceiling stretched into darkness, with bookshelves spiraling upward and outward in impossible geometries. Floating orbs of light illuminated the aisles, casting shadows that danced independently of any movement. The scent of aged parchment mixed with something else, ozone perhaps, or the crisp air after a storm.
It sounds otherworldly. What else did you encounter inside?
As we ventured deeper, we came across a section filled with autobiographies, not of famous figures, but of people we've never heard of. Names like Elias Greenwood, Marjorie Thorne, and Albert Einstein. The biographies were richly detailed, chronicling lives filled with accomplishments, struggles, and events that seemed significant. After returning, I researched these names but found nothing. It's as if they never existed in our reality.
Curious. What else did you find?
That's when things took a turn. Each of my team members found books that seemed to call out to them personally, almost as if the library was presenting them with something they deeply desired or were subconsciously seeking. Sarah, our navigator, was the first. She discovered a corridor lined with mirrors instead of books. The mirrors didn't reflect us. Instead, they showed weird, distorted scenes of places that seemed impossible. Trees made of metal, mountains that looked upside down, creatures too profound to exist outside of dreams or nightmares. Sarah was captivated by a mirror displaying a path through a lush forest leading to a mountain she dreamed of as a child. Before I could stop her, she touched the mirror, which rippled like water. She smiled back at me and said, "I have to go. I've finally found it." Then she stepped through, the surface solidified, and the scene disappeared. The mirror only showed us our own reflections after that.
What about the others?
Mark, our tech expert, was drawn to a book titled The Codex of Infinite Devices. The pages contained schematics and blueprints of technologies beyond our wildest imaginations. Suddenly, mechanical tendrils extended from the book, wrapping around him and digging into his eyes. He didn't seem afraid. In fact, he looked ecstatic. The tendrils pulled him into the book. We could hear sick, wet cracking sounds as his bones broke and contorted so he could fit. Then it snapped closed. We weren't able to get it open again.
Incredible.
Lisa, our linguist and a musician at heart, found a thin volume titled The Symphony of Silence. She opened it, and a soft melody filled the air. A composition unlike anything I'd ever heard. Harmonies that evoked emotions I couldn't name. Tears welled up in her eyes as she whispered, "I can finally hear it." The music intensified, and blood started to leak from her ears. I tried to stop her, but she ran off down the hallway and around a corner. I followed her, but when I turned the corner, it was a solid wall. There was no trace of her or the book.
Were you tempted by any of the books yourself?
I was, but after witnessing what happened to my team, I resisted. I felt a presence watching me. The librarian, perhaps. I caught glimpses of a figure out of the corner of my eye. A tall silhouette moving among the shelves cloaked in shadows. Whenever I turned to look directly at it, there was nothing there, but the feeling of being observed never left me.
Remarkable. How did you find your way out?
I tried to retrace our steps, ignoring the whispered invitations from the books and the shifting corridors. After several hours, I finally found the entrance, but something was different. I noticed a small desk with a ledger and a quill pen. An open book lay there with my name written at the top of an empty page. I didn't dare touch it. I exited the library and immediately contacted authorities for help.
And what happened after you left?
Rescue teams arrived and entered the library to search for my team. That was several days ago, and none have returned. The authorities have cordoned off the area, but they're at a loss for how to proceed. Interestingly, a few days after returning home, I received a letter. A beautifully crafted envelope with no return address. Inside was a library notice stating that materials checked out under my name were overdue and that returns were expected promptly to avoid penalties. The thing is, I didn't check out anything, or at least I don't recall doing so.
Interesting. Do you believe that notice was from the Pleasant Grove Community Library?
I'm afraid so. Since receiving the letter, I've noticed books appearing in my home. Strange titles I've never seen before, like How to Rescue Your Friends and Disappearing Would Be a Good Thing, Actually. One of them was called Why Returning to the Library Was the Best Thing I've Ever Done, and the author listed was me. Like I returned to the library and then wrote a whole book about how great it was. But I've never written a book in my life.
Fascinating. Cliff, thanks so much for joining us this evening. I'm excited to read your new book. Do you have any advice for others who want to visit the library?
I would urge extreme caution. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. Some books, once written, will surely come to pass.
Wise words. Thank you for sharing your experience with us. To our viewers, perhaps tonight is a good time to ponder the stories you've forgotten or the paths you've yet to take. Cliff's latest novel, I Went to the Pleasant Grove Community Library and So Should You, is available wherever books are sold, in both print and audio format. Although the preferred place to find it is, of course, in a library. Stay tuned after a brief word from our sponsors as we continue to bring you the news you need to hear. This is the Human News Network. We know you're listening, because you have to.